In a world where everyone talks too much, silence becomes power. It creates pressure. It creates discomfort. It creates space people rush to fill. And in that rush, they reveal weakness. They lose composure. They give away control. The weak speak to be heard. The powerful stay silent and make others respond. This isn't passive. This isn't avoidance. This is tactical silence. Used at the right time, in the right way, on the right people, it destabilizes egos, breaks social patterns, and forces others to adjust to your frame without even realizing it. In this video, you'll learn how to weaponize silence, to create pressure, shift dynamics, and dominate conversations without saying a word. 1. Silence is not passive, it's pressure. Most people think silence is weakness, that it means you have nothing to say, that you're uncertain, nervous, or disconnected. They couldn't be more wrong. Silence, when used with intent, is one of the most powerful tools in social dynamics, because silence is pressure. It creates a vacuum, a space, a weight. And human psychology hates vacuums. We are wired to fill silence, to end tension, to seek feedback, to explain ourselves, to escape uncertainty. So when you hold silence, you shift the balance instantly. You're no longer reacting. You're observing. You're not chasing connection. You're making them reach for it. You're not fighting for control. You've already taken it. Without saying a word, think about it. You pause after someone finishes talking. They rush to fill the gap. You don't answer right away. They soften their tone. You hold your gaze in silence. They fidget, shift, over-explain. That's not coincidence. That's psychological pressure, generated not by words, but by your refusal to use them. Silence is not the absence of communication. It's a change in terrain, and most people aren't trained to survive there. They feel exposed, uncertain, desperate to return to familiar ground. Where talking protects them, that's why silence, real, tactical silence, is a dominance move. Not loud, not aggressive, just immovable. It says, I don't need to respond. I choose when this moves forward. I set the rhythm, not you. From this moment on, you'll stop seeing silence as retreat and start seeing it as pressure, deliberate, strategic, unavoidable. And the longer you can hold it, the more control you gain. 2. The psychological impact of tactical silence. When used with intent, silence becomes a mirror. It reflects people back to themselves, stripped of distractions, without escape. And that's why it's so effective, because most people can't stand to face themselves without external noise. It triggers insecurity. Silence creates a void, and the first thing to fill that void is doubt. Did I say something wrong? Why aren't they responding? Are they judging me? What does that silence mean? That uncertainty turns inward. Their brain starts scrambling for reassurance, for validation, for control, and they start chasing it. With more words, more movement, more overcompensation. You didn't say a word, but you already destabilize them. It disrupts the flow of power. In normal conversations, there's rhythm, a back and forth. Speak, react, validate, repeat. But when you break that rhythm with silence, you interrupt their control. They lose the beat. They lose the pattern. They lose their frame. Suddenly, they're not leading. They're guessing, not commanding, but adjusting. and in that shift, you take the dominant position without saying anything. It forces emotional exposure. Silence makes people uncomfortable, but more than that, it makes them vulnerable. They start revealing things they didn't plan to, apologizing for things you never pointed out, justifying positions you never challenged, admitting weakness, need, or fear unprovoked. Why? Because they need resolution, they need clarity, and they think giving more of themselves will earn your response, but you're not giving it, you're holding, and the more they give, the more you gain. It creates a symmetry of control. When one person is silent and the other is speaking more and more, an imbalance forms. The speaker becomes exposed, emotional, predictable. The silent one becomes grounded, unmoved, unreadable. That asymmetry is power, because the one who says less is always harder to decode and therefore harder to manipulate, and in any social dynamic, opacity is leverage. This is why tactical silence isn't passive. It's a psychological weapon. It makes people reveal themselves, destabilize themselves, and surrender control, all while you remain still. Next, we break down exactly how to deploy it. 5 strategic uses of silence. Silence isn't just something you hold, it's something you deploy, deliberately, precisely, like a weapon. Here are 5 tactical applications of silence that give you control, without a single word. 1. The delayed response. Someone asks you a question. They expect an immediate answer, but you don't respond. Not yet. You pause. Hold eye contact, think visibly, and then you speak. This delay does 3 things. It forces them into discomfort. It signals that you're not reactive. It makes your eventual response feel measured and powerful. The more they crave your words, the more weight your silence carries. You're not stalling, you're asserting control. 2. The cutoff. You're mid-conversation, and suddenly you go completely silent. No more feedback, no response, just stillness. This move resets the energy. It says, I'm done engaging until further notice. Used after manipulation, emotional games, or power grabs. This tactic disrupts control loops. They expect pushback. You give them a wall, and nothing is more destabilizing than someone who refuses to fight back or explain themselves. 3. The gaze hold plus silence. Eye contact is powerful, but when paired with silence, it becomes lethal. You look, you don't blink, you don't react, you don't speak. The other person will almost always look away, start rambling, adjust posture, break frame. This is a dominance tactic. It says, I see you, I'm not impressed, and I won't move first. In high-stakes conversation, this one move can tilt the entire dynamic in your favor. 4. The social freeze. In group settings, people often throw subtle jabs, microaggressions, or power plays. Most respond defensively. You don't. You go silent. Stone face. No reaction. Let the moment hang. Let the room feel it. The silence becomes a mirror of discomfort. Not for you, but for the one who tried to provoke. They now look like the aggressor. You remain the grounded observer. Result? Their social credit drops. Yours rises. 5. The strategic walkaway. This is the nuclear option. Someone pushes. You say nothing. You leave. No announcement, no explanation. Just removal of your energy. This breaks every social script. It removes the stage they're performing on. It ends the conversation on your terms. And that silence, your absence, screams louder than any words ever could. Used sparingly, this tactic reshapes relationships because it teaches one lesson. You only get access to me when it's earned. These tactics aren't about being passive. They're about being precise. You're not avoiding confrontation. You're upgrading it to a level where sound is no longer necessary. Next, we train your tolerance for the discomfort these moves create. Because the stronger your frame, the sharper your silence. 4. Building tolerance for social tension. Knowing how to use silence is one thing, being able to hold it. When the tension rises, when all eyes are on you, when the other person starts cracking. That's something else entirely, because silence doesn't just pressure them, it pressures you. Silence exposes insecurity, yours too. The reason most people break silence isn't because the situation demands it. It's because they can't handle the discomfort, the stillness, the waiting, the unspoken expectation in the air. It triggers the need to justify, apologize, reassure, control the emotional atmosphere. But every time you cave, you surrender power. Holding silence means being okay with being misunderstood. It means letting people sit in uncertainty without rushing to rescue them. That takes internal discipline. You must be comfortable being the tension source. To dominate with silence, you must be the one who holds tension. Without flinching, in a heated conversation, you pause, they explode. In negotiation, you go quiet, they start offering more. In group dynamics, you say nothing, they speak just to see where you stand. Your silence becomes the center of gravity, and everyone orbits around it. But you stay unmoved, because your control isn't in your voice, it's in your nervous system. How to train this power? Like any weapon, silent command requires training. Start with these. Practice micro-silence. Pause for 2 to 3 seconds before responding. Let the air hang. Get used to the wait. Don't fill awkward gaps. When conversations die, don't rush to revive them. Let silence do its work. Hold eye contact without smiling. Train your gaze to stay neutral, even when others try to soften you. Say nothing in emotional moments, when someone vents, attacks, or overshares. Just listen. Let their own words undo them. Exit without explanation. Walk away once in a while. Let your silence speak where your presence ends. This isn't just about social dominance. It's about emotional sovereignty. Because the one who can hold silence, when everyone else breaks, is the one who controls the space. Not by being loud, but by being unshakable. 5. When to use silence and when it's a trap. Silence is powerful, but only when you control it. Used correctly, it bends the room. Used poorly, it collapses your frame. Because not all silence is strategy. Sometimes, silence is fear in disguise. Passive silence versus tactical silence. Passive silence happens when you don't know what to say. You're afraid of confrontation. You shut down emotionally. You disappear to avoid conflict. It's not power, it's retreat. And people feel it. They interpret it as weakness, avoidance, or emotional instability. You think you're staying calm, but you're bleeding power, quietly. Tactical silence is the opposite. It's a choice. It's controlled. It's loaded with intent. You're not quiet because you're lost. You're quiet because it's your move, and you're waiting to strike. Tactical silence is measured, not frozen. Still, not stuck. Commanding, not collapsing. When silence backfires. Silence becomes a trap when you use it to punish without clarity. You think it replaces action altogether. You expect others to get the message without signal. You go silent because you fear emotional exposure. In these cases, silence isn't strategy. It's suppression, and suppressed emotions don't disappear. They leak. They distort your presence. They weaken your energy. The litmus test. Before using silence, ask, am I being quiet to control the frame, or because I've lost it? If the silence makes you feel stronger, clearer, more stable, use it. If it makes you feel smaller, more afraid, or frozen, break it, because silence is only power, when it comes from a place of power. 6. Final CTA. Silence isn't absence, it's presence, amplified. It doesn't mean you're holding back, it means you're holding frame. When used with intent, silence shifts power, reveals insecurity, and forces others to show their hand first. This is how you win, without conflict, dominate without aggression, and speak without words. But remember, silence is a blade. If you hold it wrong, it cuts you. If you use it with clarity, it becomes precision. From now on, you don't rush to fill space. You let space work for you. You don't react. You pause. You don't explain. You observe, because the less you say, the more control you hold. In the next video, you'll learn how people bypass logic and trap you using something deeper, guilt, not force, not fear, but emotional debt. The next move in your psychological defense is recognizing the guilt trap and breaking free from the emotional chains that keep you compliant without question.